The forest had grown thicker than Lyra remembered. Trees stretched high into the sky, their twisted branches intertwining to form a canopy that swallowed the sunlight. The air smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves, and the silence was profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of a hidden animal. Lyra tightened her cloak around her shoulders, drawing comfort from its worn fabric, and took another cautious step forward. She had not returned to this land since her mother had died. The thought of her mother brought a bitter ache to her chest, one that had never fully left her. Her mother had been a healer, a woman of quiet strength who could mend both body and spirit. Even in death, her presence lingered, like a gentle whisper in the wind. Lyra's boots crunched over the forest floor as she approached the clearing where her mother's grave rested. It was small, unadorned, with only a rough stone marking it and wildflowers growing in uneven patches around its base. The forest had reclaimed much of it. Moss climbed over the edges of the stone and vines tangled through the flowers. As Lyra drew near, a strange sound reached her ears, a low, rhythmic growl, almost like the wind itself was warning her. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes widened as she saw them. Wolves, at least a dozen, standing silently around her mother's grave. Their fur was dark, almost black in the shadows, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, intelligent and watchful. They did not move toward her, yet their gaze held a silent power, a warning that this was no ordinary pack. A chill ran down Lyra's spine. She had grown up hearing stories of the wolves that roamed these woods, creatures bound to the will of the Alpha King, a being of both fear and respect, whose presence was felt even when unseen. And now, standing before her, Lyra felt the weight of those stories pressing down on her. Then, from the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a grace that seemed both natural and predatory. His dark hair fell around his face, and his eyes, a striking silver, fixed on Lyra with a mixture of scrutiny and curiosity. There was an air of authority about him, a presence that commanded respect and fear all at once. "You came," he said, his voice calm but strong, carrying a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath her feet. Lyra took an involuntary step back, though her heart raced with a strange mixture of fear and fascination. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around at the wolves, who remained perfectly still, their eyes following every movement. Finally, he spoke. "I am Kale Alpha of this forest, and I have been keeping a promise." Lyra frowned. "A promise?" Kale's gaze softened just slightly, though it did not lose its commanding edge. "Your mother trusted me to protect you. Even now, after she is gone, I honor that trust. These wolves are bound to me, and they will guard you as long as you remain in these woods." Lyra swallowed hard, the mixture of awe and fear twisting in her stomach. She had heard tales of the Alpha King, of his strength, his cunning, and the legendary wolves that served him. But she had never imagined standing here facing him, and the creatures he controlled, with her mother's grave between them. "Why? Why would she ask this of you?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kale's eyes darkened, shadows flickering across his sharp features. "Because she knew the dangers that lurk in this world. She knew that someone like you, someone born with quiet strength yet unaware of it, would need protection, and she believed I could give it." Lyra's heart ached at the memory of her mother's wisdom and foresight. She had always been a quiet child, observant and cautious, traits her mother had praised but also feared could leave her vulnerable. Now, standing in this forest, facing an alpha she barely knew, she realized just how right her mother had been. The wolves shifted slightly, and Lyra felt their gaze like a weight pressing down on her. They were not threatening her, yet there was a clear message. They were ready to act if she stepped out of line. She felt the strange pull of the forest, the sense that she had entered a world that operated under rules far older and stranger than she had ever known. Kale stepped closer, his movement silent like a shadow sliding over the moss. "You do not need to be afraid," he said, his voice a low rumble. "But you must understand that the forest has its own laws. And the wolves? They follow me and me alone. Their loyalty is not easily earned, but your mother trusted that I would guard you." Lyra nodded slowly, her mind a whirl of confusion, fear, and curiosity. She had grown up hearing about destiny, about the unseen threads that tied people together, but she had never felt it as vividly as she did now, standing before Cale with the wolves forming a living barrier around her mother's grave. "Come closer," Cale said, gesturing toward the grave. "Your mother left more than memories here. There is a power in this place, a bond that connects you to her, to the forest, and to those who guard it. One day you will understand it fully." Lyra stepped forward cautiously, the weight of the forest pressing down on her. She knelt by the grave, brushing the wildflowers with trembling fingers. The earth was soft and cool beneath her hands, and she could almost feel her mother's presence lingering, like a faint heartbeat beneath the soil. I don't know if I can do this alone," Lyra admitted, her voice barely audible. "The forest, the wolves, everything feels so alive, and I don't know if I belong here anymore." Kyle knelt beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You are not alone," he said softly. "Your mother believed in you. I believe in you. And these wolves, they will protect you, even when you cannot protect yourself. That is my promise." Lyra looked up at him, her heart pounding. There was something in his eyes that she could not name, something both terrifying and compelling. She felt a pull toward him, a connection that went beyond words, beyond explanation. She realized that this forest, these wolves, and this man were not just part of her mother's past. They were now part of her future. A sudden rustle in the trees made her jump, and the wolves tensed, ears flicking toward the sound. Cale's eyes narrowed, and for a moment he was not the man beside her, but the alpha, a predator and king of the forest. Lyra felt a thrill of fear and admiration. He was powerful, and the wolves obeyed him without question. But then he turned back to her, and the intensity softened, leaving only the promise in his gaze. "Whatever comes," he said, "you will not face it alone. That is the vow I made to your mother, and I will keep it until my last breath." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of comfort and longing. She did not fully understand this man, or the world he commanded, or even the magic that seemed to pulse through the forest. But she knew one thing: she could not turn back now. Something was pulling her deeper into this place, into a fate her mother had prepared her for, and into a bond she could not yet name. Then a soft whisper, carried by the wind, brushed against her ears. It was faint, fragile, yet unmistakable. "Lyra," her mother's voice, or something that sounded like it, called her from deeper within the forest. Her heart skipped a beat and a shiver ran down her spine. Cale's eyes followed hers, sharp and alert, and the wolves shifted slightly, their low growls warning her not to move too quickly. Lyra rose slowly, her hands brushing the earth one last time. "I have to see what she wants me to find," she said, her voice firm, though her legs trembled. Cale stepped forward, close enough to shadow her, yet not restraining her. "Be careful," he warned. "The forest is older than we are, and not everything within it is kind, but you are stronger than you realize." Lyra swallowed, her resolve hardening. She took a cautious step toward the shadows, feeling the pull of something greater than herself. The wolves flanked her, silent guardians, and Cale's presence lingered like a shield at her back. And as she moved forward, she felt the first true stirrings of a destiny that would bind her to the forest, to the wolves, and to the Alpha King who kept a promise older than her memory. The forest held its breath, and so did Lyra. Cliffhanger. Lyra stepped into the deeper shadows, drawn by the whisper of her mother's voice. The wolves' eyes glowed brighter, and Kyle's gaze followed her every movement. Something unseen stirred in the darkness, watching, waiting, and Lyra realized that the forest and her fate had only just begun to reveal itself. Lyra's steps were slow but determined as she followed the faint whisper deeper into the forest. The shadows thickened, and the sunlight that had once filtered gently through the trees was now reduced to thin, golden threads dancing on the moss-covered ground. Every sound, the rustling of leaves, the crack of a branch, seemed magnified, making her heart beat faster. Yet despite the growing unease, she felt a strange pull, as if the forest itself was guiding her. The wolves flanked her silently, their eyes glimmering like molten silver in the dim light. They were not threatening. Instead, they seemed to observe her, protecting her with their presence. Lyra realized that their loyalty to Cale was absolute, yet it extended to her now as well. Each wolf moved in perfect harmony with the others, a living shield around her. Cale walked behind her, his steps quiet, almost imperceptible. His silver eyes scanned the shadows constantly, alert to every movement, every sound. He said nothing, but Lyra could feel his gaze, heavy and protective, settling over her like an invisible cloak. She had always thought of alphas as distant, untouchable figures, but Cale's presence was different. There was strength, yes, but also a hint of restraint, as if he were holding himself back for her sake. The forest opened into a small clearing, dominated by the ruins of what had once been a sacred place. Crumbled stone walls and broken pillars rose from the earth like ancient bones. Moss and ivy claimed much of the structure, weaving through cracks and overgrown paths. A circle of stones darkened with age marked the center. "This is where your mother practiced," Cale said quietly, finally breaking the silence. His voice was low, respectful, as though speaking louder would disturb something sacred.
"She came here often to honor the old ways."
To connect with the forest and the wolves. She was exceptional. Lyra knelt in the center of the ruined circle, brushing her fingers over the worn stones. She could feel the faint pulse of energy beneath her fingertips, subtle but alive like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Her mother's power had always seemed gentle, hidden beneath kindness and wisdom, yet here it was tangible, almost overwhelming. Cale crouched beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Your mother made a pact with me long ago," he said. "She entrusted me not only to protect you but to guide you. You carry her legacy, Lyra. Her blood, it is stronger than you realize." Lyra's breath caught. "Guide me? What do you mean?" Kyle's gaze darkened, and he looked away toward the shadowed tree line. "You have a gift, even if you do not yet understand it. The forest responds to you as it once responded to her. The wolves, they sense it. And the world beyond these woods, its dangers, will test you. Your mother knew that. That is why she asked me to keep my promise." Lyra's mind raced. She had always felt different, a quiet awareness that others seemed to lack. But power, magic? She had never imagined it could be real, or that she would be a part of it. Cale reached out, not touching her, but his hand hovered near the ground, tracing the pattern of the old circle. It is subtle at first. A thought, a gesture, a connection. You can feel it, can't you? Lyra hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. She had felt something, a faint warmth whenever she approached the forest, a strange understanding in the eyes of animals. It was fleeting, and she had always dismissed it as imagination, but now, standing here, it made sense. "The wolves," Cale continued. "They are bound to me, yes. But your mother, she ensured they would recognize you as well. They will not harm you. They will protect you as I promised." Lyra looked at the wolves surrounding her, their movements graceful and silent. They were beautiful, fierce, and loyal. She felt a mixture of fear and awe. I never imagined," she whispered. Cale's gaze softened, though it did not lose its intensity. "None of this is easy. The world is dangerous, Lyra, and so is power. You must learn control, patience, and trust. Trust yourself, and trust the forest." For a moment, the two of them were silent, the only sounds the whisper of the wind through the ruins and the distant calls of birds. Lyra felt an odd comfort in Cale's presence, as if the alpha were a bridge between her fears and the strength she did not yet know she possessed. "You are different from her," Cale said suddenly, his voice low, almost a rumble. "Yet you are the same. That is remarkable." Lyra blinked, unsure how to respond. "Different? How?" Cale's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked past her into the forest. "You have fire," he said finally. "Quiet fire hidden beneath layers of doubt. It frightens you, yes, but it is your strength. And one day, you will understand why your mother chose to trust me with it." Lyra's heart beat faster. She had never felt so exposed, yet so seen. There was something magnetic about Kyle, a power and mystery that made her pulse race. Yet she reminded herself to stay cautious. He was an alpha, a man of power, and his presence was not merely protective, it was commanding, almost overwhelming. Suddenly, the air shifted. A low rumble echoed through the forest, and the wolves stiffened, ears flicking toward the sound. Cale's body tensed, every muscle coiled like a spring. Lyra felt a thrill of fear, but also a strange exhilaration. She had never seen him like this, fully alpha, fully aware of every danger around them. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "A rival approaches," Cale said, his tone hardening. "Someone who does not respect the boundaries of this forest. Or my promises." Lyra's stomach nodded. "A rival?" Cale nodded, his eyes scanning the dark trees. "An alpha who sees only strength and claims it without question. They will test me, and they will test you." Lyra took a step closer to him instinctively, seeking reassurance. Cale did not move away. Instead, he placed a hand near hers, not touching but close enough that the warmth radiated, grounding her. "You will not be alone," he said. "Not while I draw breath. That is my vow." Lyra swallowed hard, her heart racing. She had never known a man to speak with such certainty, such unwavering purpose. There was fear in the coming threat, yes, but there was also something else. A connection she could not name. A pull toward him that both frightened and enthralled her. As the forest seemed to hold its breath, Cale's gaze met hers fully. "You must be ready," he said. "Strength comes not from hiding, but from facing what is coming. Your mother believed in you. I believe in you. And the wolves. They will follow your lead as I have taught them." Lyra looked at the wolves, their eyes gleaming with intelligence and loyalty. She felt a strange surge of courage. Perhaps she could rise to the challenge. Perhaps she could embrace the power she had always feared. A whisper drifted through the ruins, soft and almost fragile. Lyra's breath caught. It was not Cale, and it was not the wind. "Lyra!" Her mother's voice, or what felt like her mother's, called her again. It was a sound that tugged at her very soul, urging her forward deeper into the forest, toward a destiny she could not yet comprehend. Cale's eyes narrowed, sharp and alert, and the wolves shifted, forming a tighter circle around her. The alpha's instincts flared, protective and commanding, but he did not restrain her. He trusted her to step forward, to face the path her mother had set for her. Lyra drew a deep breath, her hands brushing over the stones of the ruined circle one last time. I will follow," she whispered. Her voice trembled with fear but also with determination. The forest seemed to exhale as if acknowledging her choice. The wolves remained silent, their eyes glimmering like stars in the dark. Cale followed, his presence a shadow at her back, steady and unwavering, and as Lyra stepped further into the forest, the whisper of her mother's voice guiding her, she felt the first real stirrings of a power she had never known, and a connection that would bind her to Cale and to the wolves forever. Cliffhanger. A distant howl broke the stillness of the forest. Cale froze, his muscles tensing, and Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. Something was coming, and it was not just a wolf. The forest held its breath, and Lyra realized that the challenges ahead would test not only her strength, but the bond forming between her and the Alpha King. The howl came again, louder this time, echoing through the dense forest like a warning. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she tightened her cloak around her shoulders. The wolves stiffened, their silver eyes glinting in the fading light, and Cale's presence behind her became almost a shield of warmth and power. "They are close," and Cale said quietly, his voice calm but edged with steel. "The rival Alpha. He senses strength in these woods, and he does not respect what is mine." Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she stepped closer to Cale. What will happen?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Cale's eyes, silver and sharp as steel, met hers for a fleeting moment. "We defend what is ours," he said. Then with a low growl, he moved closer to the wolves, who parted slightly, creating a protective line around him. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. The sight of the Alpha commanding the pack, silent yet fierce, filled her with awe and fear. A shadow moved through the trees, subtle at first, then faster, stronger. Lyra could see the glint of dark fur and the gleam of eyes not belonging to Cale's pack. The rival Alpha emerged, larger than any wolf she had seen, its presence dominating the clearing. Its growl rumbled through the air like distant thunder. Cale stepped forward, his stance wide and unyielding, every movement precise, controlled. The wolves responded immediately, their growls joining his, a chorus of warning and challenge. Lyra watched, mesmerized, as the two forces faced each other. She could feel the raw power, the tension in the air thick enough to touch. "Stay behind me," Cale said softly, his voice low, almost intimate. Lyra nodded, but she could not tear her eyes away. She had never seen power like this before. Cale's form radiated authority, strength, and an unspoken command over everything around him. And yet, there was something deeper, vulnerability perhaps, hidden behind the Alpha's mask. The rival Alpha lunged suddenly, and Cale moved with breathtaking speed, his body almost a shadow as he guided the wolves in a precise protective dance. Lyra's breath caught. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them, watching the battle unfold like a living story. In the midst of the chaos, Cale moved to shield Lyra, placing himself between her and the attacking Alpha. His form was a wall of strength, his presence commanding the wolves to strike with perfect coordination. Lyra felt a surge of admiration and fear. The alpha she was beginning to trust, to care for, was a force of nature. The rival alpha hesitated, sensing the bond between Kale, Lyra, and the pack. Kale's silver eyes met hers briefly, and in that moment, Lyra felt a connection she could not explain, a thread pulling them together stronger than fear, stronger than uncertainty. "You are stronger than you think," Kyle murmured, almost to himself, as he deflected another attack. "Stronger than you know." Lyra's heart beat faster. She wanted to speak, to reach out, but fear kept her silent. Instead, she watched, learning, feeling the pulse of the forest, the power that her mother had once commanded, and the bond forming between her and Kale. The rival alpha finally retreated, recognizing Kale's dominance and the loyalty of his pack. Its growl faded into the distance, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the settling of the wolves. Lyra exhaled, trembling but filled with a strange exhilaration. She had survived the test, though it was not hers alone. Kale had protected her, guided her, and revealed the depths of his strength. Kale moved to her side, his hand hovering near hers, not touching, but close enough that the warmth radiated like a promise. "You have courage," he said quietly, his voice steady but gentle. "And the forest? It recognizes it. You are learning, Lyra." Lyra looked at him, feeling a mixture of awe, fear, and something deeper she could not yet name. I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice soft. All of this, it's too much." Kale's gaze softened, a flicker of something almost human in his eyes. "You are ready," he said. "Your mother believed it, and so do I. Fear is natural. Doubt is natural. But strength, true strength, comes when you rise despite them." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, to trust him completely, yet the memory of her mother's voice whispered caution. Still, there was a part of her that wanted to step fully into this world, to embrace the power she felt stirring within her, and to stand beside Kale, not behind him. You will teach me?" she asked hesitantly. Kale inclined his head slightly. "I will guide you, but your path is your own. I cannot shape it for you. I can only walk beside you and guard you when danger comes." Lyra nodded slowly, feeling a weight lift and settle at the same time. She realized that she was no longer the frightened girl who had returned to the forest. She was learning, growing, and beginning to understand the bond her mother had left her. The wolves circled around them once more, their eyes shining with intelligence and loyalty. Lyra felt a strange comfort in their presence. They were fierce, yes, but protective, like a living extension of Kale's promise. She felt a stirring of confidence, a spark that had lain dormant within her for too long. Kale watched her closely, his expression unreadable yet softening as she took a small step forward, testing her own courage. "Good," he said quietly. "You are stronger than you think. But there is still much to learn. The forest, the pack, and the magic your mother left behind. They will challenge you, and you will need to be ready." Lyra's gaze swept across the ruins and the surrounding forest. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence more profound, and yet she no longer felt the same fear. There was a thrill in the unknown, a call to adventure and discovery that she could not resist. Will the rival come back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "Perhaps. The world outside this forest does not understand the strength of those who protect it. But we are ready. The pack is ready, and you will be ready." Lyra felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. She was beginning to understand the depth of her mother's foresight, the careful planning that had left her in Kale's care. There was danger, yes, but there was also opportunity, an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to embrace the legacy that had been entrusted to her. The alpha moved closer to her, his presence overwhelming yet reassuring. "Come," he said, motioning toward a path that led deeper into the forest. "There is more you must see, more you must understand. Your mother's magic, the bond of the pack, it is all connected. And you are the key." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. She felt the pull of destiny, the unspoken promise between her, Kale, and the wolves. She stepped forward, feeling the forest around her come alive in subtle ways. The whisper of leaves, the flicker of movement, the soft, guiding presence of the pack. As they moved deeper into the ruins, Lyra felt a strange mix of fear, excitement, and anticipation. The forest was alive, ancient, and mysterious. The alpha beside her was more than a protector. He was a guide, a teacher, and perhaps something more that she could not yet name. And as they walked, Kale spoke softly, almost a murmur. "You are not alone, Lyra. Never alone. Not now, not ever. That is the promise I made to your mother, and it is the promise I will keep to you." The forest seemed to listen, the shadows holding their breath, and Lyra realized that her journey was only beginning. The wolves circled closer, their eyes glinting with intelligence and loyalty, and she felt the first true stirrings of power within her, a connection to the forest, the pack, and the alpha who had become her protector. Cliffhanger. A sudden, unnatural stillness fell over the forest. Even the wolves paused, ears forward, senses alert. Lyra felt it too. A presence approaching, darker and stranger than the rival alpha. Something ancient and powerful that even Kale's gaze could not fully read. The forest was about to reveal another secret, and Lyra realized that her journey and her bond with Kale would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The forest had grown still as if holding its breath. Lyra could feel it, the energy that pulsed through the trees, the whispers of life in the soil, and the faint lingering presence of her mother's magic. She stood in the center of a small clearing, the ruins of ancient stone forming a half-circle around her. Every step she took seemed to awaken the forest beneath her feet. Kyle stood a few paces behind her, watching carefully, his silver eyes scanning the shadows. The wolves were quiet, alert, forming a protective circle. Lyra could feel their attention on her, their silent patience urging her forward. For the first time, she felt less like a frightened girl and more like someone beginning to understand her own strength. "Concentrate," Kyle instructed, his voice low but steady.
Feel the forest, not just with your eyes, but with your heart.
"Let it guide you." Lyra closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath. The forest seemed to respond, the air humming faintly around her, the soft rustle of leaves like whispers in a language she almost recognized. She felt the faint stir of power in her veins, subtle but unmistakable, and the memory of her mother's touch, her mother's guidance, brushed against her mind. "Good," Kale said after a pause. "Now, try to reach out, not with your hands, but with your intent. The wolves, the energy here, they are part of the same web your mother wove. You can touch it if you are brave enough." Lyra hesitated. She had always been cautious, wary of her own abilities, afraid of what she could not control. But now, standing in this sacred place, she felt a thrill she had never known. Slowly, she reached out with her mind, focusing not on fear, but on connection. The wolves shifted slightly, their eyes shining brighter, and a soft ripple passed through the clearing. Lyra felt it. A current of energy responding to her, subtle but real. She gasped, opening her eyes to see Kyle watching her, his expression unreadable but intense. "You feel it," he said softly. "Your mother knew you would. You have her blood, Lyra." And with it her strength, her heart pounded. I didn't know I could." Kyle stepped closer, his presence undeniable, and yet he did not touch her. "It is not just power," he said. "It is understanding. You are learning to listen, to sense, to guide. That is the gift your mother left you, and it is why I am here." Lyra looked up at him, the distance between them charged with unspoken tension. The Alpha King, the man she had feared and admired, was no longer merely her protector. He was a mirror to her growing strength, a guide, and something more, though she could not yet name it. You always seem so strong," she admitted softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Even when the forest changes, even when danger comes, you never falter." Kyle's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in his silver eyes. "Strength is not what you see," he said quietly. "It is what you do when fear whispers in your ear, when doubt clouds your mind, when the world expects you to fail. You are learning it, Lyra, and that is what makes you strong." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to feel the solidity of his presence, but fear and hesitation held her back. Instead, she nodded slowly, focusing on the energy beneath her feet, the subtle warmth in the forest, the faint connection to the wolves. She was beginning to understand the bond her mother had left her, and the role she was meant to play. "Kyle," she whispered, her voice barely audible, Why do you stay with me? Why protect me even when you could be anywhere else?" Kale's expression darkened slightly, his jaw tightening. "Because your mother trusted me with you. Because the pack and the forest recognize your importance. Because I would not abandon a promise. Not then, not now. Lyra felt a stirring in her chest, something deeper than gratitude, something she could not yet name. She realized with a mixture of fear and longing that she cared for Cale in a way that went beyond admiration. He was more than her protector. He was her anchor in this strange, magical world. Cale stepped closer, so close that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Lyra," he said softly, "you are stronger than you know. And I have watched over you, guided you because it is my duty, but also down because I see what you are becoming, and I cannot turn away from it." Her heart raced. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Kyle replied. "Not now. Not ever if you do not wish. Just trust yourself. Trust what your mother left you. And trust me." The forest around them seemed to hum, the energy growing stronger as Lyra focused on it. She felt the magic flow through her, linking her to the wolves, to Cale, and to the forest itself. It was a heady sensation, thrilling and terrifying at the same time. "You are learning quickly," Cale said, his voice low, almost a murmur. "But there is more. The forest, the pack, and the magic, they are all connected. And the world beyond these woods will challenge you. You must be ready." Lyra's chest tightened. "I want to be ready," she said. I want to understand it all." Cale's gaze softened, a flicker of warmth breaking through his usual alpha intensity. "And you will," he said, "step by step, breath by breath. You are not alone. I will not let anything harm you. As long as I draw breath." Lyra swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was no longer the frightened girl who had returned to the forest. She was beginning to embrace her own power, her own strength. And Cale, he was no longer simply her guardian. He was a presence she could not ignore, a force that drew her in despite her fear. The wolves shifted, sensing the change in her. They circled closer, their eyes bright, their movements precise. Lyra felt the bond between them, the shared understanding that the forest, the pack, and the alpha were all part of something greater, a web of protection, power, and destiny. Cale's gaze met hers again, and for a moment the forest seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them in the clearing. "You are ready to take the next step," he said softly. "But it is not just about power. It is about trust, about understanding who you are, and what you will become." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. I will try." "You do not try," Kyle said gently. "You act. You step forward. And you will. I can see it in you." The forest seemed to respond to his words, the wind stirring softly, the leaves rustling like whispers of approval. Lyra felt a thrill run through her, a sense of belonging and purpose she had never known. She realized that the path ahead would be dangerous, that challenges awaited, but she no longer felt the same fear. She felt ready. Cale stepped even closer, his presence a warmth and a shield, his silver eyes locked on hers. "You are not alone," he whispered. "Never alone. That is my promise, to you and to your mother." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the first true stirrings of courage and power within her. She was beginning to understand the depth of the bond her mother had left her, and the connection forming between herself and the Alpha King, who had been entrusted with her protection. Cliffhanger. As Lyra's focus strengthened, the forest fell into a sudden, unnatural silence. The wolves froze, their ears pricked, and Kyle's gaze sharpened. Something moved in the shadows, something older and darker than any rival alpha watching them. Lyra felt a chill in her bones. An unknown presence had entered the forest, and she realized that her journey and her bond with Cale would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. The forest had grown unnaturally silent, a heavy tension hanging in the air. Lyra felt it first, a ripple of power unlike anything she had encountered before. Her pulse quickened and the hairs on her arms stood on end. The wolves stiffened, forming a tighter circle around her and Cale, their eyes reflecting alertness and caution. Cale's silver gaze scanned the shadows, sharp and unyielding. "It has come," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command and warning. "The presence we felt, it is here, stronger than any rival, older than the forest itself." Lyra swallowed hard. Fear tried to creep in, but she pushed it back. She had grown since returning to these woods. She had learned to sense the energy around her, to connect with the wolves, to listen to the whispers of the forest. And she had Cale beside her, a steadfast anchor. What is it?" she whispered. Cale's gaze remained steady. "Something ancient, something that tests all who enter this forest. You must be ready, not just with strength but with heart. Lyra nodded, drawing a deep breath. The power within her stirred, responding to the presence like a current. She could feel her mother's guidance, subtle but insistent, as if whispering, "You are stronger than you know. Trust yourself." A shadow detached itself from the trees, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost unreal. It was massive, darker than night and yet elegant, every movement deliberate and controlled. Lyra felt the pull of its gaze on her, a weight that pressed on her chest, and yet it was not immediately hostile. It was testing, watching, measuring. Cale stepped forward, his stance protective but firm. "Stay close," he instructed. His voice carried the authority of the Alpha King, commanding both respect and loyalty. The wolves growled low, their hair rising along their spines, forming a living shield around Lyra. Lyra focused, closing her eyes for a moment, reaching deep into herself. She could feel the forest, the energy that had once been her mother's, the connection to the pack. The shadow hesitated, sensing the power rising in her. "You can do this," Kyle murmured softly, so close that his words brushed against her mind. "You are ready. Trust yourself. Trust the forest." Lyra opened her eyes and raised her hand slightly, her intent focused not on fear or attack, but on connection. The air seemed to hum, responding to her presence. The shadow shifted, moving closer, circling them, yet holding back as if curious about her strength. For the first time, Lyra felt the full weight of her mother's legacy. It was not simply power, it was responsibility, wisdom, and courage. And she realized something profound. The forest, the pack, and even Cale had been preparing her not just to survive, but to face her destiny with strength and heart. The shadow lunged suddenly, testing their defense. The wolves moved instantly, a synchronized wall of teeth and fur. Cale met the attack head-on, his presence a force that seemed to merge with the forest itself. Lyra focused, letting the energy within her flow outward, guiding the wolves, shaping the forest's subtle magic into a protective embrace. The shadow hesitated, sensing her growing power. Lyra took a step forward, no longer afraid. "I am ready," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the clearing like a promise. "I will not fear what comes. I will face it." Cale's silver eyes softened, a hint of pride flickering in their depths. "Good," he murmured. "Stand firm. Trust yourself." The shadow moved again, faster this time, but Lyra held her ground. She let the connection between herself, the forest, and the pack guide her. The energy pulsed beneath her fingertips, through her chest, and out into the clearing. The wolves responded instantly, a living extension of her power, surrounding the shadow, holding it at bay. Cale moved beside her, his presence steady and commanding. "Do not falter," he said, his voice low but powerful. "It is testing you. Your courage, your heart, your bond with the forest. Show it who you are." Lyra's hands glowed faintly, a soft light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She could feel her mother's magic merging with her own, a perfect harmony of strength and guidance. The shadow recoiled slightly, sensing the rising force, its gaze locked on her, measuring her. "You are strong," Cale whispered, his hand brushing near hers, not touching, but close enough that warmth radiated through her. "Stronger than even I imagined. You are your mother's daughter." Lyra felt a surge of courage. She raised her chin, her eyes meeting the shadows. "I will protect this forest," she declared, her voice steady. "I will protect the pack. And I will honor my mother's legacy." The shadow hesitated again, then slowly withdrew, melting back into the forest. Its presence lingered, but it no longer threatened. The test was over, and Lyra had passed. The forest seemed to exhale, the tension dissolving into a gentle rustle of leaves, a whisper of wind, and the soft sighs of the ancient trees. Kyle's gaze softened, and he finally stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You did well," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and admiration. "You have grown beyond what I could have expected. You are ready for what is to come." Lyra looked at him, her chest still racing, her heart full of pride and awe. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Cale shook his head, his silver eyes meeting hers fully. "No. This was yours to claim, Lyra. I guided you, yes, but you found the courage. That courage, that strength. It is yours. And now the forest knows it too." For a long moment they stood in silence, the clearing bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, the wolves relaxing around them. Lyra felt a deep connection to everything, the forest, the pack, and Kale. She realized that she was no longer afraid of her own power. She had faced the unknown, survived, and discovered her true potential. Kale's gaze softened even further, a vulnerability flickering in his usually commanding eyes. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and steady, "there is something I must tell you, something I have felt since the moment I first guided you through these woods." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the weight of his words, the intensity of his presence, and the unspoken emotions that lingered between them. "What is it?" she whispered. Kale took a slow breath, his hand hovering near hers once more. "I promised your mother I would protect you," he said, "but somewhere along the way, I realized it was more than that. I care for you, Lyra, deeply, and I cannot imagine this forest, this pack, or my life without you in it." Lyra's chest tightened, a mixture of shock, fear, and longing. She had felt it too, the pull toward Kale, the bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. I feel the same," she admitted softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I was afraid to admit it, but I do." Kyle's expression softened into something rare, tender, and full of unspoken promises. Slowly he reached out, his hand brushing hers lightly, and Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. The wolves shifted around them, sensing the bond, their eyes reflecting approval and loyalty. "You are not alone," Kale whispered, his voice low and certain. "And you never will be. I will keep my promise. Always." Lyra smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders, a sense of peace and belonging she had never known. She was no longer just the Omega who had returned to the forest. She was Lyra, the daughter of a powerful woman, the guardian of the forest, the partner of the Alpha King, and the bearer of a legacy that was now fully hers. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing. The forest seemed to glow softly, as if acknowledging her triumph, her growth, and the bond that had been forged through trial, courage, and trust. Kale's hand stayed near hers, a silent promise and a steadying presence. "This forest," he said softly, "this pack, and you, Lyra, they are my world, and now you are part of it." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear or sorrow, but from a profound sense of love, connection, and fulfillment. "And I will protect it all," she said, her voice steady. "I will honor my mother, and I will honor us." Kale's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability shining through his alpha exterior. "Then the promise is fulfilled," he said. "The pack is safe, the forest is at peace, and our bond is stronger than any challenge we could face." The wolves circled them one final time, their eyes gleaming with loyalty and understanding. Lyra felt the pulse of the forest beneath her feet, the energy that had once been her mother's now fully alive within her. And beside her, Kale stood as both protector and partner, a presence she could rely on, trust and love. Together they stood in the clearing, the forest alive with whispers of approval, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Lyra realized that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, always be tests of courage, strength, and heart. But for the first time, she felt truly ready. And with Kale beside her, the Alpha King who had kept his promise, she knew she could face anything.